What's up, nerds? I am here with Will Jewell, the writer and director of Concrete Plans by Dark Sky Films. Will, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, greetings from England.
Cool, cool. We talked a little bit before recording. I've had the fortune of interviewing a few different people from over there, and I actually enjoy working the time zones out because I think going about our daily lives in different countries, we forget the time zones sometimes. So it's really cool. I feel like I'm talking into the future.
Well, it's the world looks pretty much the same. It's about 5 o'clock over here, so yeah,
So nothing big's happened in the next few hours for us.
the world's still spinning this
Gotcha.
afternoon. Right.
Cool, cool. So your film, Concrete Plans, is set in the UK. What locations did you use?
We shot in Wales. There's some amazing mountains there. So some of the biggest mountains in Britain are there. So we shot in sort of the edge of Snowdonia. So we were capital of Wales is Cardiff on the coast. We were an hour and a half or so north of that, up in the mountains. So literally was the manor house you see in the film was
Hmm.
literally where there were about 25, 30 crew living in that manor house, and we had a couple of other cottages on that site, and we were living in those as well. So yeah, the characters in the film are sort of stranded in the middle of nowhere, and the tensions build and everything, and the crew is kind of art imitates reality. You know, we were all stuck in the middle of nowhere trying to make a film in 15 days, which was pretty nuts.
So you had now was the 15 days your personal goal, or was it a goal given to you?
It was a goal very much given. I think it started off, it was going to be 24 days, and it kept every time, we hit a bump with the budget in the run up, it went down, and it was supposed to be 18 days to shoot it, which was going to be very tight. And then about a month or so before I had the call from the producer, we've lost a chunk of money or something had happened, and we need to cut 3 days out of the schedule. So it was pretty nuts. Yeah.
Wow. This is a thrilling horror movie with, to be honest, a kind of a modern noir feel is what I'd say. Um, I haven't read what critics or anything's saying, but it just felt like the old school noir with a modern twist. And then you threw in thriller and horror, and you've kind of like birthed this movie out of those three genres. It was
With a little sprinkling of spaghetti western as well, I think, in there.
yes, a little bit. Yes, absolutely. It was very gripping pretty early on because there was this uneasiness early on when you're meeting the individual characters, and I'm not gonna spoil anything during this. I'm gonna, because we got to make sure that people see this to get the full feel instead of hearing us talk about individual moments. But as you're meeting each individual character, there are already moments with the characters you're getting uneasy because you're seeing different mentalities already somewhat clashing, whether it be physical mentalities of different places people are from, uh, illegal immigration mentalities, uh, and kind of an air about some people, and it already builds tension there because you're like, well, they're already not going to like each other, and I've worked with a lot of people I don't like with, and it doesn't help produce good work when you're working with people you don't like. Was a lot of that written in, or can you say that a lot of that was brought by each individual performer?
Oh, it was very much in the script because there is the sort of dynamic that it's about these kind of group of working men, the group of builders who go to renovate this mansion house in the middle of the mountains in Wales, which is owned by this very sort of rich ex-military guy who kind of treats them like crap on his shoe. He kind of looks very much down. Like, I think in Britain we've got a lot more of the class kind of system. So you've already got that built-in divide between the guy in the big house who's inheriting this huge great pile and rattling around in it with his fiance, who's Amber Rose Rever from The Punisher. And then you've got the builders that he puts up in a couple of, I think, port cabins. You call them the same where
Yeah,
you, yeah, and then
trailer.
trailers, yeah, but a couple of trailers that are like literally the ones we shot in were, we saved one from the dump. It was literally ready to, it was condemned, and we had to strengthen the floor so none of the actors fell
Oh,
through. So they really, and they stunk filming in them. So I mean, you had, there's already and they were very cramped, they were horrible shooting. So they're very, you've already got the social tensions there, and then even within the group of builders, as you alluded to, touching on a lot of sort of topical political things the last 4 or 5 years. I think very much UK and US have been in lockstep and sort of moved towards maybe being a bit more insular looking and sort of slight more suspicion of outsiders. So you've got one of the builders has come from East Europe to do labouring, which is very, very common in UK. Is barely a building site you go past without some people from the East European countries who are, I guess it's the bare economics, who are often paid half what the others are. And then even within the group of builders, there's an uncle who's employed his nephew to get him out of London because he's got into some trouble, so just to get him away from everything. And there's an old guy, the younger guy. There's all those sort of social tensions are bubbling away, as you say, right from the off. And I think we just slowly bring that pot to the boil until things get pretty gnarly.
Yeah. So your cast includes, and I'm going to run through them here: Goran Bogdan from FX's Fargo, Kevin Guthrie from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and also The English Game. I believe he was also in. I didn't get to see all of that. Chris Riley from Everest and the Battle of Five Armies from The Hobbit. I believe I saw him in. Amber Rose from, as you said, Netflix's The Punisher, and she was also in From Paris with Love. And Charlie Palmer Rothwell from Dunkirk and Darkest Hour. Steven Spears, who I have seen him in so much. When he popped up, I was like, holy crap. He's been in Star Wars Episode 1, Aragon, Doctor Who, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, so much more. I have seen him. And when he popped up, I was like, is there anything he hasn't been in? We've got William Thomas from Torchwood and Doctor Who, and James Lance from Apple TV's Ted Lasso, which is a hilarious show. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, I absolutely recommend it. It's very funny. So how did you amass this cast and crew? Because as I've said, I've seen Steven Spearson a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so pleased with them. We had an amazing casting director called Ollie Gilbert. And to be honest, they were all on equity minimum, which is not a lot of money. The actors did it because they loved the script. So I as the writer of that script, absolutely knocked out by that. We were in development for 5 years because even getting the budget together was tricky. So, I wrote lots of drafts of that script and made it tighter and tighter and tighter. But to get a cast of that caliber, and because it was a low budget shoot, you tell the agents, yeah, of course they'll get a green room and all their agent stipulation and all this. And they were all, everyone was mucking in together. There's the room you'll see in the film where is the dining room in the big manor house. That was basically the operations base where, that's everyone would queue up, get their food out the hatch, and you'd have, Steve Spears and Amber Rose Rever sat next to a runner, just wherever there is. There was very little airs and graces. And to get such a great crew, and a cast and the crew was superb as well. It was just, I feel blessed to have got it. It came together. There were, as with any low budget film, we had certain cast members that were attached and then dropped out because they'd get a Netflix gig, and obviously Netflix money versus the pennies we were paying them, they jumped ship, which is understandable. So even right up to the shoot, we were having some actors drop out, other ones join, and it was pretty hairy. But we had 1 day's rehearsal and we did a read through, and we were sat in that manor house, and just like you could get this tingle. And there's such a sort of mix of accents around the table and different physicalities and ages. And you could see that the cast were doing the read through, and just these broad smiles were breaking out. And because the crew were living in that house, and the rehearsal was the 1 day before we shot, a lot of the crew were arriving with their bags for a month to shoot this thing, and just looking at the table read taking place, and just straight away going, I know that's Bob, I know exactly who those characters are. And there was this kind of this moment where everyone kind of had this little smile at each other, thinking, I think we might just pull this off. So massive respect to the cast and director, and I couldn't be happier with that crew, with that cast. Crew as well, the crew, we worked long days. I'm still slightly amazed we pulled it off in 15 days.
Yeah, because after seeing everything that takes place in the film, and I've had the ability to to work on a couple of small episodic things with crime reenactments, and I've been on stage most of my life. When you're given that kind of goal, there has to be so much that you do to put forth what the people are going to see. And seeing the movie now and seeing everything that takes place and knowing that that all was done in 15 days, because I'm like, that's half a month. I don't like, if you start thinking in numbers, you're just like, I don't know that, like, because this had to take this, to get to C, you had to hit A and B, and just to get to B had to be ridiculous within maybe a few hours or a day at most. So it was pretty intense to think 15 days produced this film. So it's definitely testament to your cast and crew and all the work. Now, this was produced by Rob Alexander, Kathy Spears, and Ian Davies, and I was interested to see that you got to work with Paul Hartnell, from the English electronic, I guess, duo Orbital.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, Paul lives about a mile away from me here in Brighton. We're in Brighton, which is kind of just an hour south of London on the coast. So I knew he lived down here. And you mentioned Rob Alexander, the producer. He had a mutual friend who knew Paul. And Paul had moved into doing a bit of soundtrack work. He wrote the music for Peaky Blinders season 2, and Orbital's music's been used in everything from Mean Girls to Triple X to Event Horizon. So, he's very cine literate. So essentially, we had a mutual friend who managed to hook us up. We went for a few beers, a few coffees, and literally over a year and a half before the film, I was just pinging playlists to him. He would ping me playlists back, and it was just very organic in that way. I mean, Paul is a legend. He's I guess it's EDM to you guys, electronica to us, but
Yes.
he's one of the godfathers of that. I mean, Orbital, they've headlined Glastonbury. They are huge.
Yeah.
So to be working with him, I was absolutely, I was honoured, and that was a really great part of the process because we'd had such a long run up to get to know each other's tastes. I used to play in bands a lot, so I can speak pidgin music. I'm a fairly middling bass player, so at least I had that head start. Paul's very cine literate, and I can speak pidgin music, so it was a fairly easy conversation. It wasn't made any easier by the fact that Orbital were touring last summer before lockdown, and so he'd always from the out said, I must finish this soundtrack by this date. And of course, we'll be fine. And the edit, of course, overran. So poor Paul was trying to score a unfinished film and hit a moving target as we were still basically re-editing the scenes as he was scoring. So lots of awkward phone calls. Paul, that beautiful bit of music you did us for that. Yeah, we've kind of cut the middle out of that scene now. Any chance you can rework the music? So there's a lot of back and forth. But bless him, he emailed me this morning. Because sent me the artwork. The soundtrack is being released on the 12th, which is a week Friday. So
wow.
The film's out in America on this Friday, and the soundtrack the week after, the Friday after. So, yeah, I mean, working with him, and he knows his stuff. He's very great at doing soundtracks, because he was saying he'd asked me not about what instrument, or he's asking about, okay, in this scene here, what mood are you after? And it's very much, he built it up for moods and atmospheres and what emotions is this scene. And so we talk in those contexts, and then we might lapse into talking a bit about music, and then he'd mull it all over, go away, and then in the next day or so, a file would arrive in the edit suite, and we'd open it, attach it to the scene, deep breath, pretty much. I think it was only once or twice that it was like it was slightly off the mark. Pretty much most times it was pretty close to what we end up in the film first time. Because I think with having that run up, we developed a good understanding.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of one of your cast members, has anyone ever told Kevin that he looks like a young Jason Isaacs?
I don't know. I can see what you mean, though. No, Kevin.
There were some deliveries and some faces. I was like, that's Jason Isaacs. Like,
you are right. In fact, I'll tell you what. One little story with Kevin on set was it's hard not to give spoilers, but something bad happens to him.
mm-hmm.
And that something bad was actually on his birthday.
Oh.
So it was a experience that we did something bad to him on his birthday, and then pulled him out of the the bad spot that he was in and dusted him off and all sang happy birthday to him and threw a surprise party. So yeah, that was it was probably the grimmest thing he's had to do as an actor. And then went and got showered up, and then we all threw him a party, which was great.
Well, that's good. So your background, did you go to school for film or theater? How did this all start for you in your life?
Weirdly, it didn't. I mean, I was a town planner, which I think you call like, urban planner over where your side. So basically, I always loved film, and music was really my first love. But I was going to be the first one in our family to go away and study, and my dad was very much like, I'm not giving you money to go and paint flowers and take photos and stuff. You're doing something that's going to get you a job. So I ended up doing town planning, but I still had the itch to scratch about doing music and film and things. I was playing a lot of bands. I was writing songs and lyrics, but they were starting to turn into stories. So I was starting to move, and I wasn't the world's greatest rock star musician. So I kind of started writing short stories from those lyrics. And then I went to an evening class and got spotted by someone who said, you should write a film. And he ran a film company. So he said, you got 6 weeks, write a feature script and give it to me. And they optioned it. So I suddenly thought, oh, that's what I'm going to do. So I was screenwriting a lot for TV over here. I wrote for Horrible Histories and BBC and Channel 4 and things. Made a music documentary called South Coast, which was about sort of how hip hop, which is something so American, had sort of taken a hold around here in the sort of south coast of UK and had found its own voice, and just sort of built up from there. So I was a screenwriter, but then kind of got fed up with producers telling me what to do with the script, when I was thinking, well, when you write something, you see it in your head. So I kind of started directing just shorts and built myself up from there. I made a short film about 8 years ago called Man in Fear, which kind of got me to the point, because that was about conceptual artists creating accidents as works of art. So it was a bit out there, but it was a thriller, and that did very well. And it was a proof of concept for a feature. So that opened the doors to me being in realistically a proposition to get a feature off the ground. So that's the kind of fairly meandering long way around the houses to get to this point, really.
So where did this idea come from? When did you start writing it?
Well, I wrote this as a short. There's a scene in the middle in the port cabin, without trying to give any spoilers away, where the builders, something bad has happened, and all the builders have done every night is sit in this horrible, stinking port cabin and play cards. So one of them makes this proposition, which is that, well, rather than throw away 5 lives and all of us go to prison, why don't we play a hand of cards? Loser takes the drop for this, and the rest of us fill our boots and get out of here. And so I'd written a short that was a 10-minute short that was about that. Me and Rob were looking for a low budget, cheap film idea, and low budget and cheap means basically handful of characters, middle of nowhere, isolated, not too many locations. And that idea came back to me. So I kind of grew it from the start to wonder how they got to that point. And then I wondered where they would go from there and grew it forwards. And we wrote a 5-page, I wrote a 5-page treatment from that, and we managed to get money from Film Wales to develop it. So that was the start.
When did you start filming it?
We shot it in March 2019. So yeah, kind of, God, 2 years ago now. Yeah, because I guess we were all ready to go beginning of last year, and then obviously COVID happened. So everything kind of went into a bit of limbo, really.
Yeah, I'd imagine that happened a lot in the film industry, kind of sitting in limbo. I know there are still some places out here, because obviously every country has handled the pandemic differently. Some, like over here, worse than others. And a lot of things are sitting in limbo still. And, it's been a year now. So the pandemic basically affected you in like releasing it.
Yeah, well, we were ready to go beginning of last year, which is pretty much just when it was limbering up. The trouble with that is a lot of film festivals, which it would have gone to kind of make a splash, were cancelled, or they were scaled right back, in which case, and they all went online, that opens up a few issues with security when you have territories you're not going to release the film in yet, and it's out there on a digital thing, and so a lot of distributors were getting jittery about that. But also a lot of film festivals are either cancelled or scaled right back, and if they're scaled right back, they just want big names to try and get noticed in everything. So it's very hard for a sort of debut film to break through. And we had a cinema run lined up over here in the UK for November, but in October the cinemas shut again because we went back into lockdown. So we lost our cinema run. So we're hoping if cinemas open here in a few months, we might try and do a short run, but obviously it's out on VOD over here now, so makes it a harder prospect. So yeah, it's digitally released, which is it's tricky because I think this is a film. You mentioned at the head this that it's very, very tense, and as a communal viewing experience, I'd seen it once in a cinema, and man, it really, you could cut the tension in that cinema. So it's a shame we lose that in a way. But also when it's a digital release, it's across so many different platforms. You know, it's on Amazon and Sky and all these iTunes, that it's very hard to get a sense. If it's cinema, you got to get the box office on Monday, and you can go to a cinema, you can see the queue, you can see how many people are in there, you can feel the room. So it's very fragmented. We know it's getting a very loyal audience because we get so much social media feedback on it and all the rest of it. So we know it's getting an audience, but we probably won't know for another month how big that audience is. And it got cracking reviews over here. We premiered at Fright Fest. Yeah, and that was strange because that was supposed to be a cinema event at Leicester Square, which is the big cinema in London, and it went digital just at the last minute. Yeah.
So when I was sent the I guess you'd call it a viewer, that was the first thing that I thought was, we got about, I probably got about 10 minutes in, and I was like, I really would want to see this in the cinema. I want to see this in a big whomping movie theater with surround sound and tension and dark, and hearing the silence of people, because you know there's that old adage that silence is deafening, and in a good thrilling movie like this is, that's such a true statement. Because when you're in a theater experiencing this, and you know you've got 100 to 150 people around you, just quiet, it's louder than any cheer, any scream, it's just so much louder with silence. And about 10 minutes in, I was like, I really want to watch this in a movie theater. Like, this is great, to get this opportunity to get to view it before it comes out, and to even get to like interview you. But I was like, I really want to see this in a movie theater. This stinks that we don't get a chance to see these movies, because you know there's tons coming out, and this, with the stream wars going on, like HBO Max are releasing their entire 2021 slate this year that would have been in theaters straight to their streaming service. So King Kong versus Godzilla, don't get to see it in the theater. You have to watch it at home on a streaming device, because that's where we're at right now. And watching this, I was just like, oh, this would be so amazing in a movie theater. So how many people did you get were there when you got to see it?
We had about 300 in, and we did a screening down here in Brighton, I guess, because it's been a 5-year process to get this film made. You know, every time I walk down the street, I bump into someone, oh, how's the film going? I just thought, I'm just going to put a screening on in Brighton, invite everyone and say, you can stop asking me, you can see it for yourselves. And it was like you say, you could hear a pin drop. It was amazing. We did a little Q&A after with the editor and Paul Hartnell. We did so it was a great event. But I mean, just the tension in that room was superb. And it was, what was interesting was I'm with you. I missed cinema, and I missed seeing film on the big screen. So I was a bit trepidation about the Fright Fest premiere being digital, but it was weird because it probably, you know, the cinema only holds so many people. It probably actually had a bigger reach, and it got to more people. And it was weird because, you know, I've lived quite a few different places around the UK, and I was getting texts all day from friends who were going, oh, you know, I'm up in Newcastle, I'm in Scotland, I'm in so and so. I've got my Fright Fest pass, I'm ready to watch it tonight. And everyone was sending photos of them with their on the TV all ready to go. And you know, straight away after it screened, all the reviews came straight in. So it was it was a strange experience, and a lot of people actually tweeting about, God, it was so tense in our living room because we were watching it there. I'm thinking, oh, imagine that times 100 would have been amazing. But it's I guess we're in the middle of a pandemic, aren't we? Well, hopefully not the middle, hopefully towards the end, but
yeah, hopefully
we have to make do. But I know that's the big, who could have foreseen this? I mean, I totally agree. I'd love to see it on the cinema screen again soon. We're hoping we do get a little run.
That's good. So without spoiling anything major, what are were some of your favorite moments in the film, whether it be watching it take place or just being involved on set while they're doing it? What are some of your favorite moments?
I think there's a couple of key card game scenes in the film, and they were great. I mean, that portal cabin that we shot in, as I said, was stinky and it was small. And you want to go and talk to an actor, you've got to climb over 6 people to do that, and then climb back. And by the time we finished shooting in there for 2 weeks, it stunk. And it was so weirdly, it was in a masochistic way that those card scenes in there, they were great. Because we were working in such a small location, we had to think on our feet. So we wanted it to have that kind of late night poker feel, but there was nowhere room to hide anything in there. So we thought, well, actually, we made this kind of shade light out of cardboard and gaffer tape, and thought, well, it's as if the builders have made it. They wanted to get a bit more ambience in there. So and that really helped give it this atmosphere. And the actors were really sort of weirdly, a lot of the actors didn't know how to play poker. So I had to teach them to play poker as well. And so Chris Riley, who was in Everest and all sorts of things, he's in the new Guy Ritchie film. I had to teach him how to play poker, and he was the dealer. So I had to basically make sure the cards were in exactly the right order. They're really, actors don't want to, I'm just going to pretend. They want to be it. They want to absolutely live it. And so everything had to be just right. And those scenes were really tense, cramped on top of each other, but just during the takes, it was just like absolutely everyone's just entranced because the actors were top of their game. And I think because it's an ensemble, they all sort of were, no one wanted to get left behind or think that, oh God, I'm getting acted off the screens. They just constantly raising their game against each other. So I think those scenes when everyone's around a table, it's just like acting masterclasses just to watch. Some takes I'd just go, I have no notes. That was fantastic. It was just a joy to watch.
Well, one thing that stuck out to me was you mentioned that it was an ensemble. If you had taken one character out, it would have been like removing a cog from a well-oiled machine. No matter who that character was, had the nephew who, by a little halfway through, I was already like, I'm ready to punch him in the face, this character, because I was like, he's performing it so well that I'm sitting here, watching it on my laptop, just like, I want to punch you in the face. Stop treating people terribly. Just so, but if you were to remove either Victor or James, anybody from those scenes, something would have been off. Something would have been different. They were all doing their part to make this machine turn easier and clear and simple and beautifully. It just goes to show that so many people focus on, like, we're in award season right now for entertainment industry, and so many people love to judge greatest actor and actress in a scene. But some of my favorite moments in all the years I've watched film is an ensemble, like in one scene, like if there's 6-7 people and they're doing such good work that I'm like, in award season, we're not talking enough about the ensemble, these moments where there is no one over the other. It's all a team effort. And this ensemble that you have is that, like you said, is, it's like a master class, watching a master class.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous that, you all got to be on set with that.
Yeah. It's a strange, some of the reviews over here have said it's a film with no real heroes, and it kind of, none of them, I mean, I think several of the actors think they're the lead, but there isn't really a lead actor. There's, in terms of, they all are very, like I said, very important cogs in it, because I had 5 years of development, so I wrote 20 plus drafts, and it was, a lot of those were about getting the formula right, getting, okay, well, I've got too much of this character in, and this character feels a bit thin, so therefore I'll adjust it. And I guess, in screen terms, you'd say we see Goran Bogdan, who plays Victor, first. So that would tend to imply it's his story. But then, other characters, the Steve Spears character is the pivot that holds it together. You've got Amber Rose Rever is a bit of a dark horse in there. There's, you've got, and they wouldn't end up where they were if it wasn't for the Jim character played by Chris Riley. So they all.
Yeah. Because early on, when you're meeting all these characters before they go to the site, I immediately was like, he's a bad egg. He's going to be a problem. I was immediately just like, he is going to be a problem. I already am weary of this guy. And that just, he played it so well. I guess another question I have is, were there any aspects or characters that you created for this that have drawn from any personal experiences or people along in your life?
It's a good question. I mean, I did bits of building work on building sites when I was kind of, a teenager, early 20s, and you know, it was more in terms of characters. There were bits of, you amalgamate bits from various people, but certainly when I had the bits of work on building sites I did, I was a long-haired sort of student at the time, so obviously there's a lot of Mickey take and banter, and the building sites are very kind of masculine, pecking order, hierarchy, trying to put other people down to raise your position in the group. So I very much sort of wanted to bring that aspect to it. And also when I worked on building sites, everyone's going to the pub at lunchtime, coming back half drunk with lethal power tools. And so I kind of always thought there's an element of danger on a building site. And I thought they were a nice setting for a thriller, because in the UK, guns aren't readily available. So when things kind of turn bad, I wanted it to be very real and very grimy and visceral. And they use what's the hand is rusty power tools.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's any one character who was, no, they were all very much amalgams. They were all sort of bits from people, and then something you've taken other aspects. So I wouldn't like to pin any of them, because they're not all particularly likable characters. So I wouldn't like to pin any of them on any one person. Some of them were started as archetypes. Like we have because there were those spaghetti western references I nodded to earlier. So you always in those have the kind of, often have the old timer character, and you have the kind of young psycho character. So I sort of thought, well, let's take those archetypes, flesh them, modernize them. And I always think whenever I pass a building site and see an old guy, you're thinking they've probably been paid cash in hand all their lives. They probably haven't got a pension lined up. And I always kind of think, God, when your back goes or your knees go, what happened? I always used to, the question that I always used to think.
That saying really stood, that motto, not really motto, but that just part of life, when that one scene happens with the older character. Is he Scottish?
He's Welsh, yeah.
Welsh. Oh, I love, beautiful accent. Beautiful accent. When that scene happens to him, it's terrible, but it delivers that. Oh, he's done this his whole life, and there's no 401k. So, what happens? If we get past what's happening in the now, and if this character goes on in his life, what does he do? Like, what happens? And you don't really think about that with laborers, and we don't, as a globe, think about that enough for laborers. But I guess another question: what's next for you? What plans?
Well, okay, I've got a few things in the pipeline. I mentioned a short film I made called Man in Fear, which is it's a bit more high concept, about sort of conceptual artists who create accidents as works of art. And that was, it was very much a thriller. It's basically, imagine if they randomly select someone and you're named the subject to their next piece. So we had Luke Treadaway in the short film, who's been in loads of stuff. He suddenly, everything around him becomes a lethal accident ready to happen. And he goes into a police station and tries to say, artists are trying to kill me. And no one believes him, obviously. And so it's that whole thing, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. So I made a short film of that, but it was very much intended to be a taster for the feature. And it got it premiered in London Film Festival and played in a lot of festivals over in America and got a lot of interest. But because of these big elaborate accidents and set pieces, the budget was a certain level. So I was told, we can't get you bonded, which means like insured, basically. This isn't a first time film budget. Go away, make a low budget feature and then come back to us. So that's obviously what the point I'm at now.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of TV things. One's set on a sort of clinical drugs trial that isn't what it seems. And I've got one about and sort of, some of them are a bit more high concept. I like to make things that have got a bit of a high concept, but they're set in the very everyday and grimy and real, so they feel believable. I've got one that's a bit more sort of Black Mirror sort of concept, but very set it's about doping in the Olympics and about a guy who takes it to extremes. And yeah, so a few things. As I think most writer directors, you generally tend to have 4 or 5 kind of plates spinning, because you never know which one's going to come off and which will crash to the floor. So yeah.
Awesome. So I like to end interviews in a certain way, kind of like my own little inside the actor studio. So are you a fan of comic books? Or
I am indeed. Yep.
so Marvel or DC?
Yeah, you know what? The comic book that I grew up on over here was 2000 AD, which is Judge Dredd and all of that.
Judge, gotcha.
But I think in terms of Marvel and DC, probably Marvel. I've got a kid who's at the age is loving the Marvel and DC films now, so I'm kind of going through a second relationship with them. But the comic that it was Judge Dredd in 2000 AD that for me I grew up on. That was my all consuming as a kid.
So who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably say Batman, because he's
Nice.
psychologically complex. You can
Absolutely.
take it. Dark Knight, and I love the Dark Knight comic. That was one I really did kind of as a kid really get into, because that was Alan Moore, I think, and he's a god. So yeah, I like the fact that you can take him dark and he's still a super.
Yeah. So who's your favorite villain?
What, in comic book villain?
Or how about all media?
All media villain. Oh, that's a doozy. I kind of like it when it's someone who's very everyday. So I mean, references to this were things like, I don't know, Best Laid Plans, Shallow Grave. It's someone who you wouldn't expect. It's that thing of ordinary people put into extraordinary circumstances, and they find where their moral compass is. And people find that their moral compass is a little more skewed than they thought it was. So maybe something like Simple Plan, Best Laid Plans, the characters in that end up doing things that, or even think about Breaking Bad and Walter White, where art goes on, where it starts off, a mild-mannered chemistry teacher who's got terminal illness to the Beelzebub that he turns into.
Yes.
So I think that's a hell of a character arc. So something like that, where it's an ordinary guy who or person who just ends up in the bleakest place, but if you've taken believable steps to get there, you go on that journey, and it's quite nice going on that downward spiral. I like films like, you look at Uncut Gems and Good Times, films where it's just you go on this roller coaster into hell with the character, and you kind of we talked about this being a seat gripper and that tension. I mean, those kind of films, those bad rides, I quite like those films.
So what's your favorite scary movie?
Just before we started recording this, we're talking about seeing movies that we saw inappropriately young, and I saw Omen when I was about 8, and I didn't sleep for about a month. So I'd probably say I haven't watched it recently. Whether it stands up or whether it feels a bit hokey, I don't know. But at the time, that gave me a lot of sleepless nights.
And finally, tell us how we can watch Concrete Plans, how we can find your film.
Right. Well, Concrete Plans is out on Friday. It's out on Amazon Prime. It's out on Fandango, Vimeo, on there's loads of different platforms, Microsoft, iTunes, pretty much any digital viewing channel you can find, it's on. And also we are getting a few virtual cinema runs as well. So if you check, that's on a sort of, I know, Kansas, Oregon, I think Philly. There's a few places where in normal times it would have been on the big screen, which we're saying how much that would have been great. Obviously, cinemas to stay alive are doing virtual cinema. So at the moment, it's popping up in virtual. So every day we're getting new virtual cinema bookings confirmed. But it's definitely on all pretty much every bar Netflix. I think it's on every digital channel at the moment. So or will be as of Friday. So you can see it digitally anywhere from Friday. Vudu as well. I think it's on there. It's on everywhere.
So how can people keep up with you? And are you on social media?
Yep, there's a Concrete Plans Facebook page. So if you go on the Facebook page, that's constantly updated. I've put some bonus scenes up there. There's Q&As, there's the UK trailer, there's some behind the scenes bits up there, and that I'll post news of where it's released, because there's new channels being added all the time. We just done a deal with Latin America this afternoon, so it's going to be released there. And things, if there's new cinemas in the US being added all the time, and who knows, maybe we'll get some physical cinema screenings at some point. So yeah, Concrete Plans page on Facebook will give you the news and updates on all of that.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk about this. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't wait till it releases to where I can watch it without, little digital letters saying for preview only on it. Can't wait to see the success that it brings you. Very hopeful. Hope to touch base with you down the road and talk about, where you are next. So I'll definitely continue to follow your success.
Well, thank you very much, Tyler. It's been great. Been a great experience. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks. Cheers to you, brother.
Cheers, and you. Bye.